Okay, what happened a few days ago on June 21st, this video is about the devastating earthquake on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border that took the lives of 1,000 or more Arabs, and many of them were children. But what a lot of people failed to notice, possibly what everyone failed to notice, is that this event occurred on the exact day of June 21st, which was the summer solstice, which is also the exact day every year asserted with NERGAL, the Anunnaki Lord of the underworld. Okay. And that's actually from Black culture, because some of the images of Nergal carved in stone, he has a very wide nose, he has thick lips, no body hair, and he has massive horns on his head like a longhorn steer. That's the image of Nergal. And so what this means is that on the June 21st, 2022, summer solstice, God's hand of protection lifted off of the Arab people of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they came under the judgment of the Anunnaki, Lord of the underworld. Okay, because all Anunnaki people don't look biracial or white or whatever like people think. There's a possibility that they might not even be fully human, Homo sapien. There's a possibility that they might not be our species. We don't know. I don't know. But anyway, but yeah, but that's pretty much it. And with Pastor John Paul Jackson in his prophecies about 2008 through 2030, which no, it does not mention this event, but in that white pastor's prophecy about 2008 through 2030 that doesn't mention this, he was saying that judgment is when God's hand of protection lifts off of a group of people. That means his hand of protection has lifted off of the men, lifted off of the women, lifted off of the children, their homes, their property, everything they own. It's uncovered. So that means they can come under the judgment of beings like Nergal, the Anunnaki Lord of the underworld. That means that they can come under judgment and attack from nature spirits who maybe might be mad as hell about the destruction of their ecosystems, and with human beings breeding like ants and just covering everything with dust, dryness, death, or just farms for growing human food and making human toilet paper. It could be nature spirits angry about the sprawl and the spread of mankind. There's even the possibility of just coming under far worse attack from other people, because a lot of times people are not genuinely very nice. They're just pretending to be nicer individuals. Okay. And so when God's hand of protection has lifted, then yeah, it might be easier for other people to try to take you out without consequences. It's a serious game, whether it's deities, nature spirits, other people, possibly maybe even extraterrestrial factions, like the sky is the limit. Ghosts, demons, wild animals, like people, they can get attacked by all kinds of different shit when God's hand of protection has lifted off of them. And the number one red flag that this has happened is that their land is dried up and dead and producing very little or no crops. You know, because even the Bible says that the planet itself has a consciousness, and the planet itself can remember the wickedness committed on it and withhold its strength. And all this wild and crazy shit that's been going on with the weather here this month, like with a blizzard with a foot of thick, heavy snow in Mexico in the middle of June, a blizzard in America's northeastern states that killed a hiker and stranded some others in the middle of fucking June, in the middle of the fucking summer. And, you know, so meanwhile, while you got a foot of snow in Mexico, you got a pop-up blizzard that killed someone in the northeastern states of America, in the middle of all of that, in the middle of fucking summer. Then you had 3,000 to 10,000 cows that dropped dead in Kansas from heat stress. But not only that, like a lot of people think it was the government that caused that, and it wasn't the government. There was like 575 manatees that also dropped dead from heat stress this same month, right before the cattle did. And that didn't make headline news because human beings don't eat manatees. You cannot go to a grocery store and find manatee meat in a grocery store. So this is an endangered species protected by law. And 507, they live in the fucking water. Okay, they live in the fucking water, and still 575 of them dropped dead all at the same time in one day this month, mind you. And it's not all over headline news. They're not repeating it. They're not fixating on it. They're not focusing on it. You know, like we can see repeating repetitive reports on what happens to the animals that people depend on for food, and the food shortages and the plants we depend on for food. We can see all kinds of recurring reports on that all the time. But in people, they'll say, oh, it's the government's doing it on purpose. But yet this same month, 575 manatees can drop dead. Nobody's blaming that on the government. They live in the fucking water and still died from global warming. Nobody gives a shit because nobody eats them. You know, and like I said, it's like the only thing that matters is what are the animals that man eats? What are the plants that man eats? And as long as people can look out their window and see farms that look green with things that human beings eat, then everything looks okay. Long as they can see animals that human beings eat in good health, everything's fine. There's no problem with the planet. You know, and I believe that's a lot of the same thinking that created probably multiple deserts on our planet. I believe man played a very big role in a lot of the creation of a lot of our biggest deserts. You know, and that's not something that they're going to teach you in school or in history class. Instead, they're gonna show you a Bible video or a medicine man video of some dude glorifying the sacredness of dust and driedness and drought and trying to be a low income or materially lacking man that has 2 to 30 or 100 females on one dusty patch of land. You know, trying to glorify that as sacred and all natural in the way to be while the earth dies under them. I know for a fact that modern technology didn't cause this. I know for a fact that it's not all the government's fault. I know for a fact that Christianity is not the origin of this type of error. I know that Islam, Abrahamic religions, I know that shamanism, I know that all kinds of shit is not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is greed, the pride of the eyes and the hearts of man. You know, the tendency of human beings to where a lot of times we might be guilty of just seeing what we want to see. And that's why we have to continually examine ourselves. And I'm very happy that some of the women among my people are calling, and also a select few of the men. I'm glad that they're kind of slowly beginning to call attention to this problem. And this is something we need to do, because the fact of the matter is that yes, the whole planet is headed towards a very, very great fall that is not all entirely the government's fault, no. You know, but here in America, my people, you know, Black people have been in the Americas for 40, 50,000 years or more. That pyramid underwater off the coast of Cuba, Black people built that. The 70 pyramids in Ohio, Black people built those. The pyramids throughout South America, Black people built those, and they're full of statues of people who have wide noses, thick lips, dreadlocks, and nappy hair. Okay, we've been here a long, long time. Asians have been here a long, long time with us. The more biracial tribes that looked like almost pure African people but with straight hair, the biracial tribes, they've been here a long, long time. This is our home. Yes, we may have done some mixing with imported people from Africa. We may have done some mixing with imported people from Europe, but the fact of the matter is, this is our home. We're being treated like strangers in our own homeland that's full of temples, sarcophaguses, and statues with our people's faces all over it. And as everything kind of comes to a head, this narrative of trying to claim that the white population is not growing, this narrative of trying to claim that our women are birthing most of the children, you know, I really don't like that, because for one, it's not true and it's never been true. And then for another, this makes immigrants, people who have immigrated to our country to live as colonizers, this makes them feel morally justified when they passively allow people to hurt us, force us out of jobs, you know, and steal our children. This makes them feel justified when they turn a blind eye to someone else passing us up for a job, but then giving it to a family member or a friend or someone of their race who has no education or very little or no qualifications for the position. You know, there's so much harm, kidnapping, financial and material losses, you know, and also lack of access to love, lack of access to marriage. There's just so much that we get subjected to, all because of our men promoting the narrative that all of our men are supposed to have access to polygamy, even if they're poor, even if they don't have money. That does a lot of harm to us. You know, our men promoting the lie that we're birthing most of the children here in this land that is our homeland. You know, that does a lot of harm to us, because then other people get to look at themselves like as if they're a hero for ignoring our suffering, ignoring the kidnap of our children, ignoring us being blocked from some of the most basic experiences in life that a grown woman should have the option to indulge in, like being loved, being valued, having a family, and not having to suffer under a bunch of men who teach each other that it's okay to be trying to build a harem while their brothers are laid up in jail sucking dick. This is just an atrocity, but a lot of these social and spiritual issues that we're dealing with, it goes hand in hand with environmentalism like a hand in a glove, okay? Like the behaviors that a lot of people refer to as sins, those are behaviors that help people to destroy ecosystems, to destroy families. These are the behaviors that help people to destroy other species, to destroy other cultures that are not their own. These are behaviors that help people to make themselves miserable and to spread misery and illness and lack and destruction in the lives of others. And yes, they can say, oh, no one can tell me how to live. Okay, but when God's hand of protection lifts off of you, and then different types of spirits, different types of beings, or even other people can lash out at you and bring you natural disasters, war, disease, death, all just social, political, environmental issues. When God's hand of protection lifts away and you're wide open for different spirits, different species, or other people to do whatever the fuck they want to do to you. Oh, then all of a sudden, you're not saying, oh, why you can't tell me how to live. No, then you're saying, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you say something? Well, why did God let this happen? Why is God letting this bad stuff happen? But yet, like, you had all the warning and didn't want it. You had all the instruction for the common sense ways to have a workable structure on your planet and in your society. You don't want it. So then when God's hand of protection lifts away, and nature spirits, deities, other people can beat your ass and kill you with your wife and kill you with your kids. Because again, a nature spirit, that's not a human being. That's just a highly intelligent spirit of an animal that died. In an animal world, it is entirely justifiable to kill you with your wife and your kids, especially if you're destroying the ecosystem and fucking up all their shit. And if God's hand of protection isn't there, they can do whatever the fuck they want to do to you. Like, they don't care. You can call it a demon if you want to based on your culture, but if your dog dies, does that automatically make your dog a demon? If your cat dies, is your cat automatically a demon? If your tree dies, is your tree automatically a demon? What we've forgotten as a species is that everything cannot always be about us. That is not a sustainable way to live. And like I said, all the crazy shit with the blizzards in the middle of summer, a foot of snow in Mexico in the middle of summer, a blizzard that killed someone in the northeastern United States in the middle of fucking summer, 575 manatees dead, and the news is not repeating it the way they're reporting on the food shortages and the cattle deaths because nobody eats manatees. Like, all these different other things that have nothing to do with our food supply, that has nothing to do with our children. Some of those are the very types of things that the news and the media should be fixated on and should be focused on repeating to be sure that the message is getting out, but they're not doing it. They're not banding together as news networks to focus on this stuff. And deep down on some level, I think, people are so ignorant where even if they focused on the animals that we don't eat in the grocery store, even if they focused on stuff like that, they know that's not going to hold people's attention. They're going to get tired of it and still claim it's the government causing all of it. People don't want to accept that maybe it's not the government causing it. Maybe it's your mother helping to cause it by throwing her legs wide open to push out six to 30 children. And no, in this country, it's not all Black American women doing it. It might be, in this nation, it's not Black women doing that. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. A lot of us were descended from the Black people who built all these mini pyramids throughout Ohio and, other states in South America, whatever. A lot of us are descended from all the wide-nosed, thick-lipped, nappy-headed people in the statues with the dreadlocks and the afros throughout Mexico, South America. A lot of us have ancestors, Black ones, that been here for 50,000 or more years, built all these fucking temples. Our ancestors made the mistake of cutting down too many trees to build cities and causing a 100-year drought. Our ancestors had environmental pressures that forced them to change their culture, that forced them to change their choices in mates, to change the choice in the type of person who they're gonna breed with. Okay? Now, when you look at the Arabs in Afghanistan and Pakistan who had that terrible earthquake on the exact day of the summer solstice of NERGAL a few days ago, when you look at them, over 1,000 of them dying with their wives and dying with their children on the summer solstice of NERGAL in an earthquake, when you look at them, what you see is a group of people who made zero changes in their culture. They made zero changes in their religion. They made zero changes in their lifestyle and their choices in mates in response to environmental pressures. And not only did they do this, men all over the planet look at them as the example of what a man should be, while they continue the refusal to change while their land is mostly dead and dried up, convincing people that they can still live good or live halfway decent even if everything's just gone, just dry, creating dust. And I believe that when God removed his hand of protection from the people on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border a few days ago on the June 21st summer solstice of NERGAL, I believe that was a sign from nature and from the older gods and also from the Most High God himself. I believe it was a sign with the Most High God taking a step back to allow that shit to happen. I believe that was a sign of higher divine powers and the pagan gods and the nature spirits. I believe that was their way of showing man, hey, you've been doing this shit wrong for a long time. It's not okay. It's not healthy. This is not benefiting anyone. I believe that was the message when God chose not to protect those people, and more than 1,000 of them died with their wives, died with their mothers, died with their lovers and their children. And I know it might sound cold, but come on, these are people who cut the penises and the balls off of Africans to make them fit to serve as slaves. That is Arab culture. These are people who treat African women like dog shit. Matter of fact, Iraqi police threw an African woman off of a third floor balcony just to do it. It wasn't even justified. They just did it just to do it. These are people who look at black people as if black people are monkeys, but while they make each other miserable, they refuse to change their culture, they refuse to change their religion, they refuse to change their choices in mates, while everything is mostly dead all around them. And then they're sitting there saying, oh, okay, well, we could just use a technology to try to force it to be better. That only goes but so far. That only goes but so far, and I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, because this is not a biology lesson. But I think everything is coming to a head, in that man is gonna, and woman as well, is gonna have to admit that a lot of these behaviors that have been considered sins, those are the very behaviors that have helped people to pave the way towards their own destruction in many cases, whether it's a destruction at the hands of their neighbors, whether it's destruction caused by them damaging their own land, whether it's a destruction caused by God removing his protection because he knows the level of loss and suffering and just massive die-off that's going to happen if he continues guarding and protecting you. Regardless of wherever the danger might come from while you're not covered, whether spirits, aliens, other people, ghosts, demons, nature spirits, wherever the danger might be, what it all boils down to is that sins are things that help us to make ourselves miserable, that help us to bring misery and loss to the lives of other people. They're behaviors that help us to destroy the ecosystems around us. Just the same way that the Sahara was destroyed, because the Sahara was green and beautiful at one time. The Sahara Desert was a gorgeous place with forests and grasslands and trees and rivers and lakes, and it was just tropical and beautiful, and now it's a wasteland. And I know for a fact that man had a hand in the loss and destruction of that beautiful, beautiful environment. So with that said, I believe that the Afghanistan-Pakistan earthquake that killed more than 1,000 Arabs with their mothers, with their wives, with their children, a few days ago on the June 21st summer solstice of NERGAL, the Anunnaki Lord of the Underworld, I believe that was definitely a sign that God removed his hand of protection from those people. Point blank, period. Totally uncovered. And that's what we're not going to see repeated and focused on in the Black community. That's what we're not going to see repeated and focused on in the Arab community. That's what we're not going to see repeated and focused on in the white or the Asian or the Native American community. We're not going to see that focused on and repeated in mainstream media, but that is the exact specific conversation that we really need to be having right now. Really. Because people, they think they're supposed to have no rules and no accountability under paganism, but that incident that happened a couple days ago makes it blatantly obvious that God can remove his hand of protection, and he don't even have to judge you, because there's other higher beings that might do it too, and one of them could do it, and the evidence seems to indicate that he fucking did do it. So that's a sign right there that you can say, oh, I don't want to deal with the Hebrew God. I don't want to deal with Most High God. Okay, well, the pagan deities and the demons, they just judge these motherfuckers too. And God's hand of protection wasn't there. So what? Are you still going to sit there and say, oh, you can't tell me how to live? Like, okay, well, other creatures, they're other beings. They're not obligated to sit there and let you eat up the land like locusts. They're not obligated to let you stay on the same path when they know how bad it's going to hurt them and hurt others in the greater scheme of things. They don't have to if they don't want to. Nobody's perfect. All we can do is like our best. That's all anybody can do. But at the same time, though, you got a lot of motherfuckers, they're not even trying. And then you try to warn them about shit. You try to say, hey, there's danger over there. They're like, so? Bitch, I don't have to listen to you. I don't give a shit about you. I'm going to ignore you and keep walking this other way. And then boom, that's the end of it. And we got to stop that. As a people, we got to stop that behavior.